mindset as an owner that every shift needs to be perfect. Every meal that goes out of your window needs to be perfect. Every customer experience needs.
And that's a personality trait. Like that's a flaw in my personality, right? Is where I always want to be the doer. If I know something has to be done, then I'm just gonna do it.
But it's kind of uncomfortable, right?
For me, it's not uncomfortable.
Right. It shouldn't be. And that's kind of where to work on time. Like, if you can't show up to work on time, you can't do anything. I don't care who you are. Like, I can't count on you for anything else if you can't show up to work on time.
You just don't know who is the right person or the contact that's going to be able to get you into that spot. So even the customer
that following week or something
right.
We just take for granted those
cards.
we take for granted like those little small steps that cost you nothing and require nothing.
Well, I want to go back to one of the segments or one of the topics that we talked about on the last episode, and it's the importance of your brand, right? And your brand is basically the name that's on the side of your food truck, right? That's what people see. That's how people are going to recognize you. Sure, there's a lot of things that go into branding, like your logo, brand colors if you have them, brand fonts if you have them. But that's really diving down into the marketing aspect of it. But let's talk about what building a brand means and why it's important as it pertains to any small business, really, not just into a food truck.
You just said something right there that clicked. Is when you sit back and you think about creating a brand, right? Is it identifiable, right?
Right.
Like, what's the identity of your brand?
Well, if you do it right, you don't even have to have a name.
Exactly.
Right. So like, it's your logo. Like
exactly.
how many companies over the years have had their logo
redone
or removed the name, and it's just the logo. Apple.
And that's the thing. Right?
Apple doesn't say Apple anywhere anymore.
Absolutely.
It's their logo. Starbucks doesn't say Starbucks.
Chick-fil-A.
Right. It's the logo.
Chick-fil-A has changed their marketing.
Right.
And I think that progresses over the years, but
Amazon. Amazon by the little smiley face.
Exactly.
It doesn't need to say Amazon, and you know what it is.
But it's
right?
like one of those things too, is like when somebody's first starting out or first creating their food truck or their food truck trailer, like it's hard because you think of something that may be catchy, that you like, the colors flow well, the name is good, the name's available. Right. But then you do it for 2 or 3 years and say you've had huge success for those 2 or 3 years. And now now you're at a point in your business where you're about to take this thing to a brick and mortar, or you're going to take this thing to a food hall, or you're about to expand. So when you hit that crossroads, like that's when I think the brand identity really comes into effect. When you first sit down, I think the first thing that you have to look at and get right as far as branding is visuals, right? Like, what does your truck look like? Are you buying a
banner or a vinyl?
Yeah, are you just magnetically sticking a banner on the side of your trailer? Did you just buy Uncle Joe's retired lawn trailer? And just cut out a window, so now you have a mobile home window as your serving window. Like, it really starts there, because when we're driving around town, or we show up to a food truck rally, or we show up to a community with multiple trucks, like when I walk up, I'm going to look at the best looking truck first, right?
Yeah, but what about those people that don't have $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 to put into a truck? And, a lot of businesses start from humble beginnings. So how do you take something where you don't necessarily have the money to buy a professional concession window or to get a $5,000 wrap? Like, what do you do in those circumstances that can help set you apart and help put your best foot forward?
Whatever your budget is, or however you're going to start, if you don't have $5,000 for a wrap, don't go out and get a $25 gallon can of paint, you know what I'm saying, and roll your trailer, right? Yeah. Like, I think there's, if you're balling on a budget, right, and there's good ways to cut you're getting into this in a budget, like, you really need to be focused on what it's going to look like visually. Like, I mean, you don't have to go out and get a $5,000 wrap. There's multiple trucks out there that don't have $5,000 wraps that still put out, quality food, quality service. It may take a little bit longer to get that customer to your truck, because you're not the one that's standing out. A perfect example is Vanchetta.
Okay.
Vanchetta. Like,
I've never
what an amazing guy.
Andy. Yeah, Andy Dolan.
An amazing guy. Extremely humble. Loves and has a passion for food. And it's crazy. When I first seen his truck, I told Carlos when we were at Citibank, I was like, this truck is spray painted. He's like, don't worry about that truck. Go try the food. Bro, once I had that sandwich, the porchetta,
Yep.
the original, everybody that I met.
But is that like the aesthetics that he's going for?
So
I think it might be different.
So it is different.
It's like
It is different because he's based out of St. Pete.
Right.
So St. Pete it has that vibe.
That truck it's got pastel coloring on it. So
Okay.
it was spray painted basically, not with cans, but it was professionally done. But it's got the whole pastel coloring, where all the colors are kind of washed together and mixed together.
It's just not your traditional truck that you would see because 90% of your trucks, if not more, either have a wrap or they have a banner or they just have or it's just a flat, they went and bought a black trailer or a white trailer with a base and then they just put one. Yeah, they just put one like their logo on it.
Right.
Yeah, but see, I think that's a perfect example of how you can make your visuals work
Absolutely.
without getting a full wrap. One of the things that your brand should stand for is being clean, right? Because no one likes to eat from a dirty kitchen. No one likes to walk into a fast casual restaurant like a Chipotle or a Moe's and seeing the line dirty, seeing food all over the steam table, seeing that no one's wiped down the tables in 20, 30 minutes, right? No one likes to see that. And it's no different than when a customer walks up to your food truck. They're looking through the window. Even if you don't think that they are, or you don't see them actually peering up, over your counter, they're looking as they walk up to the truck. How many customers in the middle of a shift stand at your back door and watch, you prepare everything, right?
Well, definitely.
And it's kind of uncomfortable, right?
It's not, for me, it's not uncomfortable.
Right. It shouldn't be. And that's kind of where I'm glad you guys answered that way, because it should never be uncomfortable for a food truck for someone to stand at your back door or peer into your window, and you should never be afraid of what they're going to see. Food trucks get a bad reputation, and they have a bad reputation in certain markets or in certain people's minds, really, about the cleanliness of food trucks. And I think it's one of those things that we battle each and every day, where, even our health inspector, right? Like, we ask our health inspector, hey, do you eat off food trucks? And she goes, absolutely not. And when we asked her why, she said, well, you haven't seen the things that I've seen out on the road. Mm-hmm. But the same goes for restaurants. Not every restaurant is clean and not every food truck is clean, right? But I think one of the old perceptions or one of the old ways of thinking were, before food trucks became popular, there were a lot of roach coaches out there and lunch trucks, and they weren't the gourmet kitchens that they've become now.
That's essentially where it all, started.
Right.
Was, the quote unquote roach coaches going to job sites, especially like the blue collar job sites, construction.
Yeah.
And then, the barbecue trailers that, Uncle Bill just put a smoker on the back of a lawn trailer and went out there and started cooking up food. Like, I think that's where it all originated from, but it's
been a natural progression.
Oh, absolutely. It's metamorphed into something that's way bigger.
Right.
We have physical rolling restaurants.
Right. So cleanliness is subjective a lot of times. So when you look at it, it's, everyone has their own definition of what clean is. And the sad part is that the health department doesn't even shut you down for not being clean. It's more of making sure your food is safe, right?
Yeah.
So,
your floors can be dirty. You could have never cleaned your hoods.
Right. And it doesn't matter to the health department, but let me tell you who it matters to.
The consumer.
Right.
100%.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
You've got to worry about it because perception is reality, right?
Absolutely. And there's a lot of times where, you're doing an event, say you're doing a food truck rally, right? This has happened multiple times where you're doing a food truck rally in a neighborhood. There's a new family that just moved in, right? They're from a neighborhood or a state or their old place that they never had food trucks. So this is their first time eating off of a food truck, right? Because they got the flyer, they seen the Facebook post or something like that. Like, oh, it's a community event. Let's take the kids down there and check it out, right? Mm-hmm. So like this is somebody that has never experienced a food truck before. Like this is their first time, Like that's what you always got to think about. Like this could be somebody's first time.
Yeah.
It's the same thing in retail. Like back in the day when we've ran retail our whole entire lives, like you could have that consumer coming in and they have never purchased the item, that your store sells, right? They know nothing about the item. They've never purchased one. They've never tried it on or anything. So like, what does that look like? Like what kind of interaction are you setting up, or what kind of expectation now are you setting up to that consumer? Like
we shoot for perfection, right? And I say it all the time, and I know that it frustrates you guys and it frustrates the team. And it's like, hey, like we have to be perfect, and perfection's not reality, right? I know that we're not going to be perfect. I know that there's probably not a single shift that we've ever worked that's been a perfect shift. It's just really, it's almost impossible to do. It's almost impossible to execute. But if you're not shooting for perfection, right? If the goal isn't perfection, what is the goal? And what are you okay with when you miss the goal? Because our goal is perfection every day, and we miss that every day. Right? We're shooting for 100% and we're coming in at 94, 95, 96%, which for us sets us apart from everyone else because everyone else is coming in at 80, right? But the point I'm trying to make is your goal needs to be perfection. You need to be in a mindset as an owner that every shift needs to be perfect. Every meal that goes out of your window needs to be perfect. Every customer experience needs to be perfect. Right? Because you only get one opportunity, one shot.
When you talk about branding, you have the 3 big C's. That's what I like to say.
Okay.
It is customer service.
Yep.
Consistency and cleanliness.
Consistency in the product.
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't have
the customer service
and everything, consistency and everything.
Yeah, the quality means nothing if it's not consistent, right?
Right.
You could have crap food, but if it's consistently crap,
then the people that like it will come back.
Exactly. They know what to expect.
Long term, you're only going to have success if you stand for something in the business, right? And for food businesses, it all goes back to cleanliness, food quality, customer experience, right? I mean, that pretty much sums it up right there. And then the marketing and the aesthetics of it are its own thing. But if you're clean, if you have good customer service, and if you have good food, that's a great starting point for building your brand. You just have to remember each and every shift, those things have to be in the forefront. The reason branding is so important is because it's creating a name for yourself, and it's creating recognition within the marketplace and setting expectations to what a consumer can expect from you each and every time, right? So cleanliness is a big part of that, right? So if your truck is clean and it's clean every time, then customers are going to know you for being a clean truck, right? If your customer service is good, if you pay attention to what your interactions look like at the window, and whether it's you working the window yourself or you have an employee working the window, like you want healthy interactions, right? You want them to be engaged. You want them to talk to customers, and all of a sudden you've created a good customer experience. So now you've got cleanliness, you've got a good customer experience. Your product. If your product is good, right? Your food is it's quality, it's consistent, it's fresh. Now you've got cleanliness, you've got a good customer experience, and you've got good food, right? If your marketing's where it should be, right? Now people look at your brand, and you've got brand colors, you've got a logo, you've got an identity, you're identifiable in the market. Those are all things that create a brand. Let's talk about your team, right? Let's talk about how important having the right people in place is. And I know on a food truck, it could be challenging because a lot of people run 2-man or 3-man, right? So, let's talk about how vital of a role each person plays and what that looks like.
Your team has to be able to have the mindset that you have that ownership vision, willing to go the extra mile. You have to have a team that can be self-sufficient without you telling them how to do it, right?
I think you've learned that the hard way, right?
And yeah, absolutely. And it's taken me a year to do that. And now I'm to that point with the guys that I have on my truck that when we show up in the morning to load the truck, I don't have to load the truck anymore. It took me a year to figure out what I've figured out now is because my personality, it's hard for me to delegate, right?
Right.
My personality is I'm always the one to do the heavy lifting constantly, and that's a personality trait.
Gotcha.
Like, that's a flaw in my personality, right?
I wouldn't say
Is
flaw,
where
but I hear you.
I always want to be the doer. I don't like delegating, right?
Right.
It's like if I know something has to be done, then I'm just going to do it.
But as the owner, you can't be the doer.
Exactly.
Because
You
you have
have
the time.
to be able to delegate. You have to be able to let your team go out on their own and flourish.
I know that a lot of the times, one of the most frustrating aspects for a food truck owner or any business owner is hiring, right? And because, it's one of the pain points in being in business, whether you're an owner, whether you're a manager in a retail location, whether, you're a manager in corporate America, like the toughest part of managing any business is the people piece. And as a food trucker and as a food truck owner, you only have one or two people other than yourself that's part of your team. What are some good practices or best practices for hiring people? What do you think?
In the food truck world?
Yeah.
Roll the dice. Like in all honesty, I say that because when I think of food trucks or I talk to other food truckers, right? A lot of food trucks are going to be family.
Right.
So it's either husband and wife or
Friends.
It's friends.
Friends
or,
of friends.
Yeah, or it's an owner and a son or owner and a aunt.
But I think that that's one of the biggest challenges for food truck operators or food truck owners is to find staff,
Absolutely.
right? That's not friends or family, because at the end of the day, your friends and your family are willing to help you, but they're only willing to help you to a certain extent. Even if you promise them, $150, $200 for a longer shift, but most of them have jobs, so they're helping you as an extra.
Sparingly.
And really, they're not really helping you for the money. They're helping you to get you out of a jam or get you out of a pickle. But it's not long term. So you can't count on that strategy long term. And what kind of experience are you giving to your customers when every time you go out to a shift, you have a different person on the truck, right? You can't build consistency. You can't build behaviors, and you can't vibe with that person. So what are you looking for when you're looking to hire the right candidate? Let's say you have the luxury of candidates not coming to you, but you can go out and find somebody, right? Because I think that that's important too. And that's probably a best practice, is to go out and recruit people to work for you. So whether it's at your local grocery store or at a local restaurant or a fast food place, always be on the lookout for talent and for people that you think are good. They're engaged with, they're engaged with their job. They're making eye contact with customers. They're executing their responsibilities, in their workplace. So what are you looking for? Like, what is that employee, that perfect employee, food truck employee? What does that look like?
Oh, right off the bat, like if I'm going to look for an employee, there's two things that I'm looking for first, or there's two things that I want to know right off the bat. Is one, are you dependable? And two, are you punctual?
Okay.
Because if I can't depend on you to be here on time at 8 o'clock in the morning or at 2 p.m. when we're taking off, then the truck is going out regardless.
So reliability.
It's got to be reliability and punctuality.
Punctuality.
You have to have those two things first before we can even move on to the next step.
Well, and that goes back to taking pride in what you do.
Absolutely.
And that associate has to take pride in what they do, right? And it starts with showing up to work on time. Like,
absolutely.
If you can't show up to work on time, you can't do anything. I don't care who you are. I can't count on you for anything else if you can't show up to work on time, right? So reliability, super important. What else? What else are you looking for in,
So once you,
in an
if
employee?
you have reliability and you have punctuality down, right?
Right.
So then the next thing that I would personally be looking for is somebody who's energetic and then has good work ethic, right?
Okay.
But
you don't know that going in.
I was just going to say, how do you
exactly
gauge
like I said. So as long as you are reliable and punctual, then I have to start going on to the next step, right? Then I have to monitor you to see where I'm going with you next, right?
So, and
you're not gonna go out and find, like, you're not gonna analyze your next candidate just by watching them or just by looking at them right off the bat. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's almost like those gut feelings you have to have first.
Right. And then you have to set expectations, right?
Absolutely.
So things like distractions in the workplace, like that's one of the things that we have struggled with in the past is like cell phones, right? Because we're in 2023, everyone's got a cell phone, everyone has a very short attention span, right? So they're looking to be entertained in between customers when there's not really nothing going on the truck or not a lot going on. Like, it's almost like a habit for especially the younger generation where they just pull out their phone and all of a sudden you're in a shift with them and they're watching TikTok or they're on Facebook or Instagram or, whatever else they're doing. But at the end of the day, it's a distraction and you're paying them to be there, right? So is the time being spent on their cell phone the best use of your money? Because their time is your money when they're on your truck, right? So you are investing in them to be there to serve a customer, but when the customer's not there, you should be cleaning, you should be looking for something to do. And if you set that precedent, then it doesn't get out of control. The behaviors don't become repetitive, because what ends up happening is if you don't nip that in the butt when there's no one at the window to take care of, then all of a sudden they are on their device and someone's standing there and they don't even know that they're standing there because they're watching a TikTok video. Right? Like, how many times have we seen that happen, or how many times have you experienced that as a consumer? So the answer is you got to be able to set expectations, and you can't be afraid to tell people, hey, this is what I need you to do, and this is what's not okay on my truck. It's one of the things that we struggle with because we constantly hire and we think that, just because we have a body and we have someone in place, we get comfortable, and we allow our employees to kind of do the bare minimum. And it's not because we don't expect more from them. It's because we're afraid of getting in that, of not having someone to go out and work a shift. Because when you're running 2-man or 3-man and one person's missing, it's almost impossible to go out onto the road that day, or it's almost impossible to go work a shift. So sometimes we accept, we accept traits or we accept behaviors that are below our standards, but just to have a body on the truck, just to be able to go out and work a shift. And I think that that's a mistake, because then you find yourself like we've all found ourselves at this table to where we're carrying the weight of ourselves and the weight of our employees in order to, be able to conduct business for the day. But what that does is it doesn't allow you to focus on the details, and it takes you away from what you should be doing, which is looking at things from the owner's the owner level, right? So instead of, going in and making sure that everything is done, you're actually stuck doing it. And then you don't have time to make sure that everything's done. So things slip through the cracks. So, one of the most important aspects of this business is making sure that you have a strong team around you. And the only way to have a strong team around you is to build a strong team. And the only way to do that is to set expectations and hold people accountable to those expectations. Right. Yeah. So you do that through checklists. You do that through training. You do that through repetition. So like Adam said earlier, it doesn't happen overnight, right? You can't just hire someone, show them once, and expect them to do it that way each and every time, right? Behaviors. What did they teach us in retail? Behaviors take 30 days to learn and to execute on a consistent basis. So. You can't expect to bring someone in, train them for 3 days, and then they know what to do. Balance is important.
You have to
so,
absolutely.
Building a team on a truck is much the same as, building a relationship, any relationship in your life, whether it's with a spouse or a family member. Like, they say that opposites attract. Well, you kind of have to have a different skill set from that other person that's on the truck with you to be able to complement each other, and your skill sets have to complement each other. So, maybe that second employee doesn't have, the ability that you have to see things, see the long game. Like all the time you talk about the long game, right? So maybe that employee can't see the long game, and you're the visionary that can see it. And you should be, as the business owner, you should always be looking at things not about what's going on today or what's happening during this shift, but how this shift is affecting tomorrow's shift or next week's shift or next year, and that's your role and your responsibility as the owner, but you can't expect your employee to have that, right? So what are the things that you can't focus on, now, because it would take away from your focus on the overall vision that employee can execute, and how does that employee's skill set complement your skill set or complement what you've got going on the truck?
Is that a rhetorical question?
Yeah, it's one of those things that you should think about whenever you're assessing, whether you have the right people in place. Gotcha. And you can't be afraid to move on from people. I think that, we talk about burnout, and we talk about people in the industry, losing focus. And after that 100th order, that 200th order, that quality starts to fall, whatever the case may be. It's the same thing with an employee. Like if you've had multiple conversations and you're coaching and you're training and you're saying, hey, this is what I need you to do, and they're not executing, you can't be afraid to move on from that employee and find someone else, because at the end of the day, like, your responsibility is to your business and it's not to your individual employees, no matter how long they've been with you, whether they're friends, whether they're family. Because a lot of the times, like, we get into business and our family's helping us out. But at the end of the day, your responsibility is to your business, and you need to always keep that in mind, and always make the decisions that are best for your business. And sometimes that means taking a toxic person out of the workplace and removing them, because as an owner, that falls on you. So let's say you've had an employee for 3 years, and they started the truck with you, because this happens a lot, right? You're the first person you hire ends up being your right-hand person. Now they've been with you for 3 years, and all of a sudden in year 3, their passion and their drive just isn't there. But you feel responsible to keeping them there because they've been there since day one, right? They're your ride or die, right? But if they were your ride or die, they would still have the same passion and the same enthusiasm, because they know and understand how important upholding your brand is and making sure that the business continues to grow. Every individual is a tool in your tool belt, right? Your employees are tools in your tool belt. You have to have the right tools for each stage in your business. And sometimes your business changes. And if your employees can't adapt, then you have to move on from them, because if not, they're going to become anchors and they're going to hold you back from continued growth. And change is really hard. It's one of the hardest things of life in general. And people don't like change because change is tough. It's hard. It's hard learning new things. It's hard, setting new expectations. It's hard achieving those new expectations, right? Because there's comfort in consistency. Like, if something's consistently the same day in and day out, you get comfortable and you feel good about it. And it's like, it's second nature, right? You can do things with your eyes closed, but you can't grow. A business can't grow if it's not constantly evolving and constantly changing, because time is always moving forward. So in order for you to keep up with time and keeping up with the times, you have to change and you have to adapt, right? COVID came. And the trucks that were around before COVID that didn't adapt, they didn't pivot, they didn't change, they're no longer in business. And every year, every day, there's a different COVID. It's just not as big and not as grand. But every time, the industry shifts or the industry changes, or, food is very, it's very fluid, right? There's different trends that come in and out. I remember a few years ago, like, sriracha came onto the market and everyone had like a sriracha something. It was, Popeye's Chicken had a sriracha chicken sandwich, and all these places infused sriracha into their menu. And when's the last time someone really talked about sriracha? Like, it's been a long time. Now it's just an ingredient that we use in a sauce, but it's not like a main feature. Same thing with tacos. what are those tacos that are super popular that a couple years ago they came on the scene that
The ones that are dipped inside the sauce?
yeah, the birria tacos, like that was a huge thing a couple of years ago. And there's trends, right? And you have to be able to keep up with those trends. And as a food truck, like you want to be on the forefront of those trends so that you get people excited and you get new customers to you. But if you have a staff that's unwilling to try new things, right? Or every time you try to introduce something different, they're like, oh, we have to change this again and do this again. That's not a person that you want on your truck, right? Because they're holding you back from that next step, from that next trend, from growth.
Well,
and sometimes it's, the person that's closest to you. Sometimes it's your second in command, right? Where they fall into a routine and they get comfortable, and all of a sudden maybe you step away to focus on another venture or to focus on growing the business, and you leave that person in charge. And if that person isn't willing to grow with you, or if that person isn't willing to take that owner mindset and say, hey, these are the new things that we can try, and these are the things that we should test, right? They're just holding you back. Then your business becomes stagnant.
And then you lose money. So,
because people are addicted to the new thing. Like they want to try the new restaurant on the block, the new food truck on the block. Like when we, with All About Food Trucks, the organization, my booking organization, every time we send a new truck out, that truck blows the average out of the water. And the reason why is because it's a new truck. People want to try it for the first time. It's something new. And people in general, like you're always chasing new experiences. You always want to try things for the first time. So I think that's why it's important for us to continue, changing and adapting and evolving so that we don't fall behind the time. Let's say that you're a food truck and you're a food truck owner and you found your right-hand person, right? And they're a great asset to the truck. They do everything they're supposed to do. They execute every shift, every time they show up, and they're just all around great. How do you keep that person long-term?
I think before you can answer that question for that employee or that associate or that staff member, whatever you want to label them as, you have to ask yourself, what are you doing this for?
Okay.
Is this something that you do long-term goal, or is this something that you're doing for flexibility and freedom?
Right.
Because if this is something that you're doing for flexibility and freedom,
right, then they have no future.
Then they have no future,
and you can't offer them a future.
You have nothing to offer them.
Right.
So your goals and your end goal and your mindset, or whatever your overall goal plan for your business is going to dictate on what you can do and how you can do for your employees.
I agree 100%.
So if your drive isn't there to grow the business, to create more food trucks, to get into a food truck park, or to create a brick and mortar, then
you're going to have to accept the constant.
It's going to be a revolving door.
Right.
You don't
have anything to offer them.
Exactly.
Right.
You have an employment to offer them.
Right.
But they have to understand, and a lot of times in the hospitality industry, in the restaurant industry, that's what people have. They have employment.
Or they're college kids that are going to school and they're just looking for a job to pay their bills.
It's very rare to find that diamond in the rough.
Right.
Or that young entrepreneur that wants that drive. Because then if you do find that person and your goal was to just for flexibility and freedom, but now you found this diamond in the rough.
Right. If you don't take advantage of that
person may push you and drive you
to grow.
Right. Exactly.
You still sounded like a politician with that answer.
But that's the right answer.
That's a complete right answer.
Right.
I mean, I get it.
Right.
I get it. But
so
what about that person, that kid that you've seen the entrepreneurial shit mindset, right? Are you taking his or her entrepreneurship mindset away from them by making them an employee and making them stay as an employee?
No, I think that you...
How do you see what I'm saying?
If you, yourself as an owner, are not willing to grow, then absolutely.
Yeah. You're hurting them.
You're hurting them.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
The best you can do for them is to teach them what you know and hopefully, expand their skill set. And then
they can run off and create their own business.
Help them achieve.
Show them the ropes.
You gotta find the diamond.
Let them save their money and they create a food truck.
Well, the problem is that if you're not in a position to where you're looking to grow your business or continue to grow, then your business is stagnant, right? Even if it's successful, like, but you're doing the same thing day in and day out. You're bringing in the same amount of revenue, the same sales. You can't have employees where you're giving them a raise every year or where you're giving them incentives to stick around long term because you're not growing, right? So each time, let's say your truck does $300,000 a year and you've done $300,000 a year for the last 4 years, right? And you have employees, and let's say that each and every year you've given your employees a $70 raise a week or a $50 raise a week or whatever that raise looks like. But if you're not creating more revenue, then that's taking money out of your pocket, right? So if you're not growing, it's really hard to have your employees grow under you. And that's the point that Adam's trying to make. So at that point, you just have to accept that, hey, every 6 months, every year and a half, I have to find somebody and retrain them and rehire them. Absolutely. Because you have to, it's a balance, and you have to accept that as part of your business plan, because at the end of the day, like, you're just looking to work enough shifts to pay your bills, right? And to meet your responsibilities in your household. And that's all that you're looking for. Well, you're not going to keep anyone long-term because, it's really hard to do. Yeah. How do you grow your business, right? So how do you go out and get new locations if you're not doing it through a booker? If you're trying to land like a big client or a big spot, let's say you know of an office building where there's 3,000 people in that building and they've never had food trucks before. Like, how do you land that big customer?
You're getting good with the ones who have the contact.
With like networking? You mean networking?
Yes. Who has the contacts?
Security guards.
Okay.
Car wash guys. Because the car wash guys got onto that lot.
Okay.
And if the car wash guys got onto that lot, they know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody.
Right.
So at the end of the day, you just don't know who is the right person or the contact that's going to be able to get you into that spot. So even the customer that comes up to your window, make sure that they're going back to the big 3 C's. Make sure that they're getting everything so that if you do find out that that's the person, they have already experienced what it is to come to your truck, and they'll be the first person to co-sign you.
Yeah. I think using your resources, and we talk about resources all the time, but like using the tools that are available to you, like social media, right? So like if you have a spot that you're trying to get into and you're an individual food truck owner and you're trying not to go through a booker or an organizer, ask your friends or your followers on social media, hey, like I've been looking at this location for a while and I think that my truck would be super successful there. Do I know anybody that works for that company? Do I know anybody that works at that location? Do I know anybody that services that location? Because the person that might be the N for a specific location that you're looking for might be in your circle and you don't even know it. Right? They might follow your truck. They might already eat from your truck and they just don't realize that, hey, I would love to have this truck at my location. I would love to have this truck at my job. Right? I know Tina down the hall in HR. She's the person that Tomas can talk to about coming to our building. Right? So don't be afraid to ask your followers or ask your network for help in getting into some locations or getting into new locations where you can take your truck and hopefully be successful in.
I worked with a barbecue truck back in the day, and that was the first thing that he told me. He's like, anytime I come to a good solid spot, he said the first thing that I do is I pop open my phone. I look at the surroundings because all of these apartment complexes or business complexes and stuff, they have their own like
social media sites and pages.
And the first thing he does is message them. He said, I might send out 100 and only get 3 replies.
And that's a great segue because as an organizer, that's exactly what we do, right? So like the most cost-effective way of finding new work without spending money on advertising, because we spend a lot of money on advertising too to bring up new business, is we do research. So for us, we use a tool, and I'll say it publicly because it's available out there, but LinkedIn has what's called Sales Navigator, right? And you pay for it. It's a paid service. You go in, and what it does is it allows you to search for contacts by company, geographical area, size of company, by their job title, right? So we go in and we filter it by, within 50 miles, I want to see what HR professionals are working at companies with more than 500 employees, right? And what Sales Navigator does is it spits out everybody that is on LinkedIn that has that position within 50 miles of you, right? And then you pay for the amount of messages that you send out. So like, let's say with their basic package, you pay for 50 messages, right? So it only allows you to message 50 people. Now, just because you message 50 people, you might get one person that replies out of those 50 people, because a lot of it, it's spam. I mean, just think of how many messages you get in your email each and every day. How many of those do you actually open, that are unsolicited emails, that are not from friends or family or business partners or someone that you interact with, right? So you might only open one or two of those and you might have 100. Well, it goes the same for all of these contacts. So like when we reach out, we send emails, hundreds of emails out a week. We send messages through that, LinkedIn platform, and we just hope to hear a 1%, 2%, 3% return on those messages. But those are all new locations that you didn't have before, right?
Conversion rate wise,
Yeah.
that's phenomenal.
Absolutely.
Because I was doing outbound.
It's the same thing as cold calling. Like,
exactly.
You call 100 customers. If you get one yes, you made your commission for the day. You hit your goal for the day. If you're a food trucker that's looking for more work, especially during the seasonal months or the slower months, like how do you do that?
So it's funny that you say that, because one of the things I was doing the other day, Tommy and I actually went to one of the markets that were here local to us in Brandon.
Yeah.
And when we went, there was a smaller market, but there was actual food truck there. So I was like, it started clicking with me. I know that food trucks do, markets, and there's a ton of markets all over the place. But one of the biggest things that I found is I opened up my social media, Facebook specifically, and I'm not following any of these things.
Right.
And I think that's a detriment to your business. If you're a business owner and you're trying to find business, or you're trying to build your network and build your personal brand, like, you need to be, they're all free to join. All you gotta do is click the button, right? So you need to be looking for all of these. You need to be a part of every one of these groups, whether it's car show groups or markets that are all over the place, or utilize Google and the internet to see like what's happening in Tampa, like what's happening in Tampa this weekend, or what's the big one that is it the COT or CO Post?
Creative Loafing.
Yeah.
They're the Creative Loafing is our area, like food blogger or food publication that everyone kind of follows.
Exactly, like little things like that. Like, you need to be a part of every single bit of that.
Yeah. And I think that, a lot of us get discouraged when we're looking for new business, or there's a festival and you just heard about it. It's like Burgers, Brews, and Blues, right? And they're expecting 5,000 people. And you're like, oh, I'm going to email the organizer, or I'm going to, put in an application to be a vendor. And they come back to you and they say, hey, sorry, we're full. Then you kind of stop there, and you shouldn't. You should write that down. You should notate it on your calendar so that next year, 3 months before the event, you're reaching out, and then you actually have an opportunity to book it, instead of being disappointed or discouraged that you didn't get it this year, because a year comes back like in a heartbeat, especially when you're in business. Like, the time just flies by. And you never know, that same event organizer or that promoter or the company that's putting that on might have 6 or 7 events throughout the year.
Absolutely.
Maybe they do something every other month, and it's not Burgers, Blues, and Brews this month, but next month it's something else, or the following month it's something else.
Don't just take the rejection email and not say anything. Respond back, hey, thank you for your time.
Do you have
any other events? Hey, keep me in mind. This is the cuisine type of my truck.
Right. And I do that all the time. I think that's a best practice too for food truck owners, is after you do a catering for a customer or you work an event, always write a follow-up email or a follow-up message saying, hey, do you have any feedback for us? Is there anything that, that you were unhappy with? Or is there anything that you want me to compliment my team on? Or, hey, thanks for the gratuity that you left at the window. Cause, sometimes I'm not on the truck, or a lot of the times I'm not on the truck. And I just want them to know that I know that they left a gratuity, so that they understand that we're paying it out to the team. But tying it back to making sure that we're following up with customers, even when it's a successful event, and reminding them, hey, anytime that you need a food truck or you have friends or family that are looking for a food truck, like we're your guys, right?
Yeah.
We want to be like your first phone call whenever you have any kind of food need. And then give me the opportunity to tell you, no, I can't do it, or no, I'm already booked, right? And that's super important for having not only repeat business, for new business as well, because every time someone has a good experience, if you ask them to, and that's the big thing, because everyone loves talking about bad experiences, but it's very rare that they'll go on and give you a positive review, right? Customers are like 10 times more prone to giving you a negative review for a negative experience than they are for a positive one. But when you go out and you ask them, hey, I know you had a great experience. I would appreciate if you recommend me to your friends or family. You'll be surprised at how many people actually do.
I'll tell you what, you would be surprised. And I know this is this is a huge pet peeve of yours.
Yeah.
You would be surprised how much just leaving your business cards on your table
For you.
on the food truck do for you.
Absolutely.
And you could be on a busy shift where you're not paying attention, but next time, I implore you to pay attention, right? Put 20 business cards out on your serving table.
See
right?
how many you have left.
And then see how many you have at the end of your shift, right? Like that right there is contacts being made. It's going in somebody's pocket. It's going to sit on somebody's desk.
Right.
It may get handed to somebody's friend. It's going to get left in a purse.
Right.
But guess what? That the lady that it fell in her purse, or she put it in her purse, and 6 months from now, when she gets a new purse, or she changes it out, and that pops out, maybe she has an event that following week or something like.
Right.
Like we just take for
I need
granted
more business
those
cards.
we take for granted like those little small steps
Yeah.
that cost you nothing and require nothing
Well,
from you.
it goes back to conversion. It's just like sending 100 emails, right? So every business card that you hand out isn't going to come back to you. It's not going to be a lead. It's not going to turn into a catering. But if you hand out 100 of them, right? One phone call and that is a confirmed booking pays for 1,000 business cards or 2,000 business cards, right? So if you're a truck that doesn't have business cards, shame on you, right? You should definitely, that needs to be the very next thing you do after watching this podcast is ordering business cards. Because I know that we're in 2023, right? And this is the digital age where people have digital business cards or QR codes or websites. Like I get all of that. Believe me, we have them. But I can't tell you how many times I go to a business meeting and someone asks me for a business card and I hand them my little fancy metal card that's a QR code and they go,
I don't have my phone on me.
no. Or they go, don't you have a business card?
Exactly.
And I'm like, yeah, actually I do. Give me 1 second and I'll pull them out. Right. But like my first instinct, because we live in this digital age is to
go digital.
Right. Let me give you a QR code because you're not going to lose that. I know that you're not going to lose like my contact once you save it, but they're also never going to look at that contact once they save it either. No. But a business card is kind of the physical reminder of, hey, remember me. You know,
I've been asked so many times. I would venture out to say at least once a week when I go to a gas station to fill up the generator or the truck, somebody's walking up to me saying, "Hey, do you have a business card?"
Right.
Facts.
Or how do I find
or,
you?
Hey,
or where do I go?
You,
or
right. So I'm spilling it off. Hey, Facebook, Instagram or whatnot. And then there's been times where I'm stuck, like where they ask me for a business card and I don't have any. I ran out.
Right.
And then you feel stupid.
Right.
See, so I just
that's like somebody ordering a burger from you and you ain't got a burger.
So, and it's just another simple thing that you can do to grow your business. Yeah. So I think the last thing we need to talk about when you're looking at landing like that one location that you've been unable to land, or you're looking to try new locations, is you have to go in it with a mindset that, sometimes you need to make an investment in a location for it to pay out long term, right? So something as simple as, if you've got an in with a location, but they're unsure, offer for their executives or whoever the contact is, hey, come out to my truck and I'll buy you lunch, right? Here's when I'm in your area the next time. I want you to come out and see what it's like, when I'm at another office park or at another location that's similar to that one that you really want, have them come out and see what the experience is going to be like, so that they know what to bring back to the office and what talking points to hit with whoever that decision maker is, right? And incentivize them. Say, hey, I'll buy you dinner, or I'll buy your family dinner, or whatever the case may be, so that they see firsthand what it is. And sometimes a location's an investment, and sometimes you have to try it on a smaller scale. So maybe Tuesdays is the day of the week where they have the least amount of people in office. Or actually, I think these days, Mondays and Fridays are probably the slowest days at office buildings, right? And maybe they say, hey, can you come out on Friday? And in your head, you're like, Friday. I know that it's going to be dead. Like, I don't want to come out Friday, right? But if they're asking you to come out Friday, that is your opportunity. That was a yes, right? That was a yes, you can come out. Don't mess that yes up with, hey, can we do Tuesday instead? Can we do Wednesday instead? Because that might be the difference between them saying yes or no, right? That might be the turnoff to where they're like, you know what, this isn't a good idea. So, twice a month, right? So don't be afraid to take an L, right? If it's for the long game. And, that's one of the things that Adam talks about all the time is some of these trucks, are afraid to take an L, or they don't want to take their lumps, or they're only interested in the big shifts or in the big wins. But a lot of the times, like, your long-term success comes from those smaller shifts, or those shifts where you might not necessarily make money on, right? But you've got to take those opportunities to get your brand in front of people, to get your truck in front of people, because those smaller gigs might turn into larger ones.
Guaranteed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You got to be willing to take your lumps. You're not going to hit a home run every time.
Right. And those lumps might not always be losses, even though on paper they were a loss. If it leads to another catering, if it leads to another event, a new contact, we had a slower shift at the hospital a couple of weeks ago, and a customer came up and was like, hey, I'm with the college, right? The nursing college. Yeah. And they're like, I'm with the nursing college. I want you guys to come out once a month to the nursing college. And all of a sudden that college has, 2,000 kids on campus, once a month for testing, and we got in, right? Well, we would have never gotten in if we wouldn't have taken that smaller shift.
I just got that confirmation.
Yeah.
That's awesome though. That's phenomenal.
Yeah.